again. So I just thought I would read maybe a little piece of it for you. All right. So find my page. Sasha's heartbeat thundered in her ears as she turned a corner and found herself at a three-way intersection. She took a quick look around, trying to get her bearings. It was no use, though, because the hallway looked much like all the others she'd been down so far, bare, with zero in the way of character or distinguishing features. She might be in a repurposed guerrilla compound south of the temple, over the border into Honduras or Guatemala, or she might be on the 30th floor of a high-rise somewhere in the States. There was no way to tell. As long as she kept moving, she could keep the fear at bay. The moment she paused, though, suffocating doubts closed in. How was she supposed to find her way out? Even if she got free, what next? How would she get home? For that matter, where was home? Hysteria pressed, making her wonder whether, if she closed her eyes and wished hard enough, she'd wake up back in Boston and find that the last year or so had been a terrible dream. But she knew deep down inside that this wasn't a nightmare, at least not a sleeping one. This was a twisted version of reality created by a group of whack jobs obsessed with acting out ancient prophecies that meant nothing in modern times. Moving quietly on her bare, chilled feet, she passed a row of metal doors and turned another corner, only to be brought up short by the sight of an ancient-looking stone slab blocking the prefab hall. She'd avoided the other two stone doors she'd passed, pretty sure they led to Iago's torture chambers. This door was larger, though, and carved with the image of a winged crocodile, or maybe a dragon. Her instinct said it was the way out. Then again, her instincts had been known to make some pretty bad calls in the past. Whispering a prayer to nobody in particular, she pressed the flat of her palm against a protruding stone that looked like it ought to be a pressure pad. For several agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the stone panel grated and slid sideways into the wall. Heart hammering, Sasha stepped through into the corridor beyond. Excitement kicked when she saw that she'd finally found someplace that looked different from where she'd been. The hallway was more like a tunnel or a passageway in some ancient ruin. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made of interlocking stone blocks, some carved with worn motifs she didn't recognize, others rubbed smooth, the whole of them pieced together in a pastiche of carved and uncarved sections, as though assembled from several older sources. Light came from bare bulbs hanging off an electric line that was bolted to the low ceiling. There was another doorway at the far end, steel again. What the hell was this place? Doesn't matter, she told herself. What matters is getting the hell out of here. When she did, she was going to find some cops, or mercenaries depending on where she was, and she was going to come back and kick Iago's ass. Gritting her teeth as cleansing anger surged, Sasha reached for the door. It swung open before she touched it. 4 gray robes stood in the opening, heavily armed and wearing body armor, as though they were expecting an attack. Or they already were under attack. They gaped at her. Shock hammered through Sasha, who screamed for the first time since she'd awakened, but then she bit off the cry and turned to run. "Get her!" the front man bellowed. She dodged his grab and jammed an elbow into his throat, driving him back into the others. Then she swung the door into him and fled down the stone-lined corridor. Behind her, the door banged back open, and there were shouts of, "Shit, get her!" and "No! For sake, don't shoot! Iago needs her alive!" Breath rattling in her lungs, she fled up the hallway, heading for the sliding doorway in the prefab tunnels beyond. Booted footfalls rang behind her as she flung herself through the stone doorway and swung back around to scrabble at the pressure pad, trying to get the panel to shut. It started moving, but way too slowly, grating snail-like on its hidden mechanisms as the footfalls pounded nearer. Faster, damn you! She hit the button again. Fear sizzled through her, along with the sudden certainty she wasn't ever going to get out of here. That Iago was going to leave it. A pair of strong hands yanked her away from the door. "Come on!" A stranger dragged her down the corridor, hauling her to a stumbling run, but she was barely aware of moving. Her entire attention was focused on the man who had come to her rescue. He was wearing black paramilitary gear over a black muscle shirt and bristling with weapons. But that wasn't what had her brain vapor-locking. What had her in a state of paralyzed shock was the fact that he was freaking huge, he was freaking gorgeous, and he had dark, wavy hair and the eyes the same green as the pine forests of Maine and the man in her dreams. So that was an excerpt from Skykeepers. It comes out in August 4th to be exact, and I hope you'll check it out. This is author Jessica Andersen, thanking you for spending some time with me.